Ladies and gentlemen, the moment we've all been waiting for. He's an MC, he's a DJ, he's a tastemaker, he's a journalist. He has what I like to call beige rage. And he's my homie. I mean, I don't even know how else to describe him. Phenomenal dude. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, bring it to the stage, my man, Preach Jacobs. Let's go.
My name is Ho. H to the OP. I used to mold snowflakes by the OC. I guess even back then you can call me CEO of the OOC. Trying to come up man into the fire. Be the music band's number one supplier. Ain't a piece of paper for every man. Got the hottest chick in the game. Man, my chain is right.
Can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me? Oh, I hear feedback. Oh! All right. Thank y'all for coming out. Give yourselves a round of applause. Quick rundown. You know, it's COVID and all that stuff, but as an artist, you want to create, you want to still do some fly stuff, so Trust has been really, really gracious where we're like, how can we do some fly shit that is COVID friendly? And I'm like, what if we did something where I just talk to like dope people and keep them on the other side of the stage? And that was kind of the idea with Preach Jacobs. So have some very, very great people coming out tonight. But I'm gonna warm you up. I'm gonna do a song or two. That's all right. Everybody say yeah. Play some. Not that one. I'm fucking with you. I'm fucking with you. Play it. Pause it for a second. Pause it for a second. Pause it for a second. All right. So if y'all been through this before, act like it's brand new. But I do something called the OK All Right, which is basically, you know, we family now. So when I point at myself, I say okay. I point at y'all, y'all say all right. We're filming it, so like we're gonna add like crowd applause. It's like it's 1,000 people, but that'd be totally irresponsible because it's COVID. So shout out to y'all looking like ninjas tonight with your mask on. Make some more noises for yourself. And we're gonna test it out like this. The okay, all right. So it's real simple. Don't cost that. It's not one. But 1, 2, 3. Okay and all right. Come on, we okay. You wait.
All right.
Come on, we okay. You wait.
All right.
Come on, we okay. You wait.
All right.
Come on, we okay. You wait.
All right.
Come on, we okay. We.
All right.
Come on, we okay. We. Come on, bitch. Fuck it. Let's go. Where's the noise coming from? If you like this song, the record is for sale right now. Please help. I'm a starving artist. I'm gonna need y'all help with this one. Real simple. We go like this. Okay and all right. Come on, we okay. You wait. 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 Come on, we okay. You wait.
All right.
Come on, we okay. You wait.
All right.
Come on, we okay. You wait.
All right.
Yeah, and just rise in the morning. There ain't nothing scaring me. My rhymes are equivalent to a form of therapy. To get you in that mood, tunnel vision with precision put me in that mood. Like I'm in London, you're nothing my sound out there. Is there anyone like me? I really doubt there's another like me. Horror, undercover, nothing you see. Horror, renaissance like a sea horror. In the 20s, put lights in them all. When nowadays I heroes fall, heroes be falling. LeBron is the future, Obama's more under. And me ain't really what you used to. Marcus started resurrection in the southern boy. It's not irrespective. So if you don't like him, you're gonna have to deal with it. Forever like the Philippines, baptize the sound. Trying to all your ears with this. Get up, get up, get on down. Get up, get up, get on down. Rhythms got me drenched, no need for a towel. Get your speakers wet when I'm baptized in sound. Baptized. Get up, get up, get on down. Baptized. Yeah, yeah. Rhythms got me drenched, no need for a towel. Get your speakers wet. I will see what y'all, if y'all know some hip hop in the building. We're gonna do some like hip hop stuff just to get y'all ready. So, cause usually the crowd participation stuff works when it's a song that you know. So pick one of those two. Pick one. What you got? I don't know if we about to play. Alright. But get y'all in the mood before we meet my homie Sanford Greene out here. If y'all know this one, sing along. One for the money, yes sir, two for the show. A couple of years ago, on hand and then the low was the starter. So good, but me and my nigga rolled the water through the hood, trying to find that hook up. And everybody look up at that ceiling, watching ceiling fans go round, trying to get that feeling on instrumental. Got my pencil, that was my paper. We hit the 86 on the way to the Decatur, trying to find a spot up in that light up in that spot. Over the week you rock, doing the hole in the wall club. Give us stop, like freeze. We're making the crowd move away, making no G's, and that's a no-no. 1, 2, no. Niggas in the Cadillac, they call us when we're playing long ball. Just stop on the Memphis like little rocks are banging. They say, they banging. Try to go vocab from now. I don't know what the big boys in the street right now. The big big boys are not your soul to this day. Well, sure, let's sing along, cause I know I'm gonna do it like this. Me and you, your mama and your cousin too. Rolling down the strip on goals, swimming Cadillac toes. You got me and you, your mama and your cousin too. Rolling down the strip on goals, coming up slamming Cadillac toes. How many of y'all old enough to remember when that song came out? Make some noise. Both of you, let's go. Before I bring my homie out, I wanted to talk to you guys for a second because I think that with everything going on, everybody being stuck at home and everybody having their mask on, communicating becomes a lot more important, right? Those phone conversations with your homies out of town become more important. Like you say, I love you more. You know what I mean? Back in the day, like you tell your homie you love him and look at you crazy. Now it's like, oh, this is dog. So there was 2 stories that I wanted to tell before I got Sanford out here. Since it's Black History Month, I have like a story about me meeting a very prominent Black history figure. For round of applause, how many of y'all know Dick Gregory? All right, so I have a Dick Gregory story. It's not fancy, but it's funny to me. I'm in Atlanta, it's about 10 years ago. I get done doing the show in Apache, and after we're done doing the show, there was a 24-hour Chinese spot called Chinese Buddha. And it was the days I was a vegetarian. I ain't no more, hush. You laughed a little too hard at that one. So they used to have this menu that whatever they had on the menu, you can order the meat versions of stuff, the vegetarian version. So I'm like, yo, we get done with this show, I'm gonna get this money, and me and my homies is in the band, we going to Chinese Buddha to get some vegetarian food. I was excited. So we in Chinese Buddha, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I look at this table, and I'm like, yo, is that Dick Gregory? Right? And it dawned on me. Dick Gregory's like in his 80s, right? He's old, he's an older Black gentleman, probably in his 80s, got his, white nappy beard. And I'm like, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. If it looks like Dick Gregory is Dick Gregory. If you somewhere at 3 o'clock in the morning and somebody look like Morgan Freeman, it's Morgan Freeman, right? Just narrating your dinner. You're just eating the mashed potatoes, right? So I'm like, I gotta say something to Dick Gregory. And I didn't know what to do. Dick Gregory was getting up, he's about to leave. Now, mind you, he had like these younger chicks with him. And like to him, he was macking. But when I say younger chicks, they were like in their 60s, but he's 80s. So he's macking, right? But they still old. They get the ARP stuff in the middle, right? So I try to run up to Dick Gregory to say what's up, and I'm nervous. And I look down. Dick Gregory has a long strand of like toilet paper on his shoe. So me being a civil rights hero of mine, I'm like, uh-oh. So I just basically stomp on the toilet paper and do like that. And I go to him, and I say, Mr. Gregory, my name is Chris Jacobs. My family grew up on you. It's an inspiration to meet you. Thank you so much for all you've done. And he said something that really stuck with me. He was like, how's the family? They're good, right? And it's all right. He walked up with 2 young chicks, right? You know, he walked up with somebody's grandma. But that moment stuck with me because there was something endearing about it, where it's like, I meet this older black gentleman, and the first thing he said to me was, "How's the family?" And that's something that I take with me because I feel like when we're doing what we're doing, whether we're artists, whether we're communicators, whether we're in the African American community, where we're talking to each other, communicating with each other, we're all family in a way. And being an artist and speaking to people, that's something that's very, very important, right? You don't have to know somebody's mama specifically to care about somebody's mama. And that was something that really, really stuck with me. And the second story is really quick that I thought was really funny to put these 2 things together. I'm out with friends years ago, and somehow, some way, if you're around a group of middle-aged black folks, at some point in time, they're gonna play this game called "What the hell was I beat with when I was a kid?" Right? And everybody just started, and it was like a competition, right? Everybody was like, "Oh, I had, shoes were thrown at me. Oh, I had to pick my switches. Oh, I got hit with an extension cord." And everyone is like laughing. And there was a moment where I stopped and I said, "Yo, y'all do know this is really traumatic, right?" It's like, this ain't normal. Like, we laugh at Color Purple, but it's a traumatic movie. Like, we shouldn't be doing this, right? And I thought it was something really, really beautiful about that, because I feel like even through the pain that we're going through, the level of communicating and telling our stories and being responsible for telling our stories is really important. Even if we go through some really, really terrible things, we can find the beauty in it. And that was something that I really, really take with me, that you can find anybody that's a part of your tribe and your struggle brings you together. So those are 2 things that I want you guys to keep in mind. How's the family? Because we family now. If y'all showed up here on a night on Friday when y'all could be out watching a game or be on Amazon Prime or something, y'all here because y'all are family. And our stories are intertwined, and that's why storytelling and hearing people talk about their history and talk about who they are is very, very important to me. If that's all right, everybody say yeah. Yeah. All right, we ain't gonna keep y'all here long. I'm gonna bring out my first guest. This homie of mine, he's worked on Black Panther. He's worked on the Boondocks. He's a graduate of Benedict University. He's also a professor for the master class with Sanford Greene. He is co-creator of the comic book Bitter Root, which also got a film right with producer Ryan Coogler this past year. He's a recipient of the Key to the City to Columbia, South Carolina. He's also an Eisner winner. On the count of 3, I want y'all to make some noise. I want all the other people to be quiet. On the count of 3, I'm gonna make some noise for my homie Sanford Greene. 1, 2, 3, let's go! Test your mic out, see if it works for you. Oh, I know we're getting into it. Busting raps is what I do, right? So, you've been my homie for like over 20 years, so it's really kind of funny where it's like have the outside world kind of looking on this. So like a lot of these questions I think is really interesting over the years of things that you told me that I think would be really dope for people to hear. Now, usually, what's interesting to me is that when people are really successful in whatever field that they do, they really talk about their successes, but I'm really interested about the origin stories. Because we come from a similar background. We joke about our fathers all the time. Southern black guys, they country as hell. And
fake mustaches.
Exactly. My dad has the Burt Reynolds. He get mad when I call him that. But I wonder, somebody that comes from that background, when was the first time you realized, all right, this is not only something that I'm interested in as far as being an illustrator, but something that I might be able to make a living out of, and something that your family was like, that boy can draw, we can do something about this.
You know, coming from the metropolis of Greeleyville, South Carolina, anyone familiar with that area of this country, Greeleyville, South Carolina? It's very, very rural. In the dictionary, you see the word rural, and Greeleyville is right beside it.
Mm-hmm.
And,
My family from Eastover, so we know.
oh, trust me, Eastover is a little more.
Eastover's Brooklyn?
Yeah, it's Brooklyn to our Staten. But you got to take a ferry to get to. But the small rural area was definitely low resources. Not a lot of. This is, you know, even predating the internet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about communication at its most arcane level,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, barely got telephones, you know, one phone per household, rotary type stuff. And, but what kept me entertained was Saturday morning cartoons, and just being fascinated with that. And I remember my mom, again, because of our environment and culture of that time, low resources, your events, you know, the family's outings
Mm-hmm.
were at a premium. Like going to the grocery store was, as a kid, was like, yes, we get to go, you know, like the food is like the second, you know, benefit. The primary benefit is that we get to leave home and adventure. Instead of walking, we can drive because mom is taking us. But when we go, I remember going to the local Kmart.
Rest in peace to Kmart. Have y'all seen the Kmart?
We're talking about, you know, just where that environment, Kmart was kind of the Walmart at that time. And there was this book rack of comics known as a spinner rack.
Mm-hmm.
Spin this bad boy. And I remember seeing this thing, like I'm here and where your DJ equipment is, I see it that distance. And I was fixated on this thing because I never saw it before. I went to the store often, and I see this thing, and you know, I'm like 8, 9 years old, and I just levitated towards it because I saw some images that looked like the stuff I saw on TV, Superman, Batman, characters like that. I was like, wait a minute, there are drawings on these books of these characters that I see on TV. And mind you know, as a kid, I would try to draw from the cartoons that I saw. You know, but again, it's cartoons, so it's hard to,
Stay still.
Right. There's no VCR at that time. At least we didn't have one yet. And so it wasn't an option to pause anything. So I'm just trying to capture as much as I can. But here is something I'm putting 2 and 2 together. And I'm like, wait a minute. These are books that have these characters that of the things that I see on TV. Maybe if I get one of these, I can draw from this. And this is back in the days where your mom would leave you in a store.
I see you later, baby.
And yeah, you know, you can be, you know, she comes back. Of course, I'm right there, and she sees that I'm fixated on these books, and you know, the magical words that pretty much changed the trajectory of my life. She said, "You interested in that?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Okay." She bought them, and the rest is history.
What was the first book you got?
Can't remember. I think it was like an Iron Man something.
Okay.
They were in a 3-pack.
Oh, you got one of those? Okay.
Yeah, one of those mystery packs. You get this weird one in the middle. You can't tell what it is until you open it, and it's like, oh, Donald Duck. You know, what this hero.
Somebody want to read about this? How terrible Howard the Duck was. That was an awful movie. Like the 80s gave us like a bunch of really terrible things.
Yeah.
So
you know,
I'm interested also, like the things that you've done. What was the first? I guess it'd be what was the first time you got like a placement or a gig that was just like, wow, this is something professional and I can pay a bill or two? You know, I'm not just doing homies flyers anymore.
Well, it's kind of muddled together to some degree because I did graphic design stuff before I really got into illustration and making that a full-time gig. I will share this one story. My wife will appreciate this one. But there was an opportunity to work. We were pregnant, and I got this opportunity to work with
Lucasfilm.
It's Lucas Arts, but it's still, it's all the same.
For the people that don't know, this guy named George Lucas did something called Star Wars. It's a little small thing.
Yeah, it's got a lot of space.
That's sound effects, like
Space Wars. Space Wars.
Space Wars.
Actually, that was one of the original names for it.
Really?
Like the working title was anyway. But yeah, I got that opportunity, and that came right when I was ready to. She's pregnant with our first child, and I'm feeling this pressure to we're newlywed, or at least we're still young in our marriage. And I'm feeling like, man, I need to make something happen. And I was ready to go to work anywhere, Walmart or whatever. And I think the minute I made that decision to kind of not press so hard to try to make it, that I was willing to surrender and just take care of my family, that's when it came. And got an email, and I yelled out, "That's right, give me a look." And
We gonna make it.
That was a pretty impactful moment.
I'm interested when I talk to artists where the origin stories are really important, because it's something that I think is disingenuous that a lot of successful people do. I don't think they're doing it on purpose, but it's like, I have an issue with platitudes where like people are like, you know what? Just work hard every single day and you get to where you need to be. It's like, it might not be all of it. Like, there's people along the way that might have helped and gave opportunities, and you got to break those type of things. But I'm also interested in those stories where, when I hear about successful people in the field, I'm interested in what are those moments where it felt like a failure, and you're like, I want to give up. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm about to get this job at Verizon Wireless. You know what I'm saying? They got nice weekends.
It's funny that you say that, because now that I'm kind of recollecting here, thinking through the time chronologically, I think right before that Lucas was that moment. I think I had an opportunity with a publisher that was working with Disney, supposedly. This is the one thing that you would find, if anyone's into arts, whether it's music or whatever, you're going to come across people that are going to offer you the stars and the moon and whatever, especially as a young creative person. And they kind of sense that, they're like, hey, we love your work and we would love to, offer you whatever contract. And so I got this opportunity, supposed opportunity, and that was the moment I felt like, this is it, we're going to make it. And, we're excited about it. I'm putting in a lot of work, but then I didn't hear from them for like a few weeks, and I'm a little concerned because we're supposed to start on this project. It was a Disney, I think it was Tron actually.
Really?
Yeah, it was working on and long story short, I finally got a reply back from some person I'd never heard of, and they said, hey, it looks like this thing is not going to work out. Best of luck in your future endeavors. And that was it. There was no explanation other than that. They didn't say, I'm like, wait, this has got to be, and at the bottom, they whatever the information was, it was from the company, but it wasn't the people that I normally hear from. So I'm replying back. I emailed them back maybe 50 times.
Please, anything you got, I'll do whatever.
Let me, at least let me understand what happened. And I remember, I didn't even say anything to my wife. She comes in and she notices that I'm just sitting in front of my computer, just staring at it, looking, distraught. And she happens to see the email. And she walks out of the room, and I think she goes into the other room, and I overhear her calling to see if she could, and this is, I think she had already stopped working because she was far in her pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
She was calling, looking for, opportunities for applications for work or whatever. So I'm like, oh, and to hear that, and I'm like, what? I said, no, this will never happen ever again. And that one got me. And so, like I said, now tying in that other story, I was like, yeah, that's it. I can't keep going down this road. And mind you, it wasn't like I was fighting for years and years and years and years and years prior to that.
You're not like a rapper with a mixtape.
whatever. It's like,
I have a mixtape, guys, if y'all want, please.
it wasn't like I was doing this stuff for like 5-6 years, struggling, trying to make it.
Yeah.
But it was like maybe 2 years, 3 years, and that felt like twice as long, though, because you're talking about a very unconventional, profession, especially living in this part of, at that time.
Yeah.
This is the early 2000s, right? Like 2003, 4, something like that. So, I'm at a place where I'm like, well, this is it, and I guess this ain't in the cards. And I had forgotten that I submitted my portfolio to, it was so random. It was a friend who knew someone, and it somehow got to Lucas. And I got an email like 2 weeks later. And so that pretty much, so it was like 2 weeks of like darkness.
Yeah.
And then it opened up.
I think you say something that's really interesting because you're in South Carolina doing a lot of these things where I compare it to a lot of other different type of mediums, right? So like if you're a musician, people are always saying, go to Atlanta, go to New York, or if you are into film, go to LA, go to Hollywood, that type of thing. So you really have a non-conventional approach about being in this industry, which in a way I think really helps out with your approach to things, right? Because if we can talk about the origin of Bitterroot that you won an Eisner for, and I guess the best way to explain the Eisner, and Eisner is basically like the Oscars for comics. Is that the best way of saying it?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. But I'm flaunt for you. But I say that to say, Bitterroot was a total like independent operation where if you have the security of the bigger platforms of the Marvels or maybe the DCs of the world to say, I'm not dealing with you guys. I have this idea of something, a very new property. It's not like, Batman, they reimagined Batman 30 times in a row and there's another one coming out this year and I'll watch it. But to be able to think of something brand new, non-conventional, the cast is 1920s, black cast. Tell us about the origin of that and why did you feel comfortable about saying, I have a lot of these things that might be considered more security, but I believe in this project and I'm gonna go towards that.
Black Panther was the reason. Worked on that.
So tell me, how did that happen? How did that happen with the Black Panther?
Worked on Black Panther comic series, and then did some promotional stuff for the film.
Was this when Ta-Nehisi was writing for it?
Ta-Nehisi, yes.
Okay.
Yep. And so, long story short, obviously the film did all right.
Yeah.
It did okay.
Made a couple of dollars.
It made some change, and me and my partners, who was at Marvel at the time, David Walker specifically, he's another one of the co-creators. We were working on Luke Cage as well, which is another property with the black, lead cast and what have you. We did the comics, and they used some of our story as an influence for the TV show. But there was a kind of a caveat there, is that that's not our toys. That's Marvel's toys.
Yeah.
And we're putting in a lot of work.
And they can take it away from you whenever they want to.
And they can, move on to some whole another thing, which is what they did with the Luke Cage thing. Nothing negative, it's just kind of the business. It's all right, well, we got this, we achieved this thing, on to the next thing, but we wanted more. We were like, hey, we had ambitions of doing Luke Cage for years and years. If I had my own way, I would have still been working on it. But sometimes you kind of need that unconventional, interference, if you will, because that we didn't expect it, because Luke Cage was doing well on TV, the comic was selling well, Black Panther was blowing up, hey, why not more of this stuff? And they just kind of wanted to do some different things with it, use different, creators, which is fine. But we had a lot of ideas still kind of in the tank. And so we were like, with all of this momentum that we have as creative people, why not take that and do our own thing? We got a lot of attention now. People are willing to listen and see what we are willing to do if we were to go off and create something. So we took that opportunity while our stock was high.
You know what's interesting too, that I guess I want to kind of offer some perspective to the audience, where there was a moment of this synergy where Michael Coulter, who played Luke Cage, is from South Carolina, went to Benedict, right?
Yep, for a moment, yep.
We have you that worked on the properties of Black Panther, and then the late great Chadwick Boseman is from South Carolina as well. So there's something about, I don't think it's an accident that
Viola Davis,
is Michael's cousin.
From up the road.
Cousin, yeah.
From up the road.
Yeah, she coming. She said she's on the way. But y'all laughing, she coming. But I thought it was interesting. Like, what do you think? I guess one part of the question is like, do you think there's something specific about people coming from non-conventional backgrounds that are able to get into these industries that can look at it totally differently? Do you think that when you're in a room of creatives that might be from stereotypically, bigger cities, that you have kind of an edge on them?
Well, yes and no. I think a lot of it is just opportunity and timing and just the mere fact that they have the skill set to do it. Where you're from may play a part in it.
Yeah.
I think it is pretty. It's pretty awesome to be able to connect all of us together in that sense, and to know that we're coming from these small towns, and maybe on some level, I think if you're coming from these different perspectives, there's a little bit more of an appreciation, a little bit harder work ethic, I guess, maybe, because you came from humble beginnings, if you want to call it that, but a lot of people came from that.
My city got pig pickings.
Yeah.
Do y'all know what a pig picking is? By a round of applause, what a pig picking is? All right, for the three of y'all, the three country people, because we used to laugh about pig pickings. Tell people what a pig picking is.
Oh Lord, I'd rather not. Let me tell you about bitter root real quick. I can tell you that.
Pig picking is all in the name.
It's all in the name.
All in the name.
But so we decided to go over and do our creator-owned series, Bitter Root, which is about a family in Harlem in the 1920s during the Harlem Renaissance. That they're a family that has a duty and a kind of they're connected to a greater purpose, and that purpose is to defend the cultures of our people. Harlem at that time was the rich in culture and way of life. It was the apex. And they are fighting against these forces that is basically trying to destroy it, because it's what it means and what it could mean moving forward. So basically there are monsters out there that they're fighting, and they're trying to protect this. And they're not only protecting Harlem, but they're trying to protect everything that's like that, right? Why we chose that time period, honestly, is because the time period is so rich. There's dates that kind of predates the Harlem Renaissance, like the early, in the 1919, 1920, era. There's this event called the Red Summer, where I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but we are tying in a lot of these moments in history to move the story along, and it's based in rich history, but it's also fantastical and you know, think Harry Potter with black people, and that's pretty much you know.
Could you imagine seeing something like that when you were about 9 or 10 years old in that Kmart?
Oh yeah, I mean, it would obviously would impact me, like, you know, I would imagine as a young child, then seeing something like that. Oh yeah, it would have made me feel even more empowered, you know.
Well, I know this is still in process, in production and working all together, so I'm only bringing up the stuff that's been public. So Bitterroot, there's like a movie coming. Ryan Coogler is producing. How did that come about? And Ryan Coogler is the director of Black Panther. So how did that come about?
The film that did okay.
The film that made like $2 or $3.
$2, $3.
Yeah.
He is basically a comic book fan. Obviously, working on, you know, Black Panther, but he was apparently buying our book.
Really?
He was out in LA and he was going to the comic shop, this place called Golden Apple in LA, and that's from what I hear, that store and bookstores or whatever, that's where a lot of the directors go. They go there to see, you know, oh wow, this looks interesting. Graphic novels and comics are like, that's the hotbed right now. It's like, that's where all the content is coming from. I mean, if you look at the reason why there's 100 different platforms right now is because of the content that is being created through comics and graphic novels, you know. So yeah, he was buying it, and Legendary Films got the option, meaning they kind of control releasing it. When that was announced, he contacted them and said, I want to be a part of that. And so that's pretty much what happened.
And he has a really thick Oakland accent, so I can imagine.
Very much so.
Sound like Marshawn Lynch. Hey, yo partner, I want to get on that bit of root, you know what I'm saying? So, I have a random question, and tell me if you agree with this, and I want your thoughts on it. Very important question. Coming to America sequel. My theory is this. The movie's been out, the original Coming to America is over 30 years old. And Eddie Murphy, he's like been in his house doing nothing. And all of a sudden he wants to do a sequel to Coming to America. My theory is he saw what was happening with Black Panther. And he's just like, a movie about a fictional African country can generate billions of dollars. Arsenio, what are you doing?
So here's a kind of an interesting story. Coogler pitched Coming to America before he got Black Panther.
Really?
And Eddie said, nah. Yep.
Are you serious?
He's gonna find it. I'm gonna make Wakanda.
Yeah.
Not exactly that. He didn't
Close
respond
enough.
like that.
But
But he
you know.
did. He reached out to him and wanted to do Coming to America sequel, and they weren't really interested. So to a
Do
point,
you have faith in that trailer? Have you seen the trailers?
No, I haven't. But to your point, maybe that did kind of make him go.
I'm certain that's what happened.
You
I'm
know,
certain
because
that's
you felt like he
I started this.
not even necessarily that, but I think it's, he had the same guy reach out to him before, and he turned it down, and it was like a missed opportunity. But that stuff, I mean, you hear about that stuff all the time. I've heard a story. I know a guy, actually, who is a professor at Savannah College of Art and Design, who turned down working on Star Wars because he said to them, and I quote,
Oh, no.
"It'll never work."
Oh no.
And
He's a heavy drinker now.
I don't know what he does now, but he ain't doing that, that's for sure.
Well, tell us about your master class, because I don't think anybody's doing anything what you're doing nationwide.
I'm really excited about this opportunity. So over the years, I've been blessed with being able to connect with creators and talent from every facet of this industry, whether it be graphic novels, film, animation, all these different. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's a lot of talented black folks out here, besides, Ryan Coogler, which is awesome,
Yeah.
but there's a lot more out there, even more behind the scenes and more hands-on. And, I was doing a class at Benedict College. I graduated from there. Shout outs to the BC Tigers. My wife is alumni there as well. I saw kind of a void. I'm teaching these classes, but, where the real work, the opportunities that are coming from, that people are getting these opportunities to work in animation and even comics to some degree, they're coming from, either CalArts or the internet.
Mm-hmm.
They ain't coming from these other places, these opportunities. So I'm like, what can we do to bridge this gap and change the trajectory to some degree? So I started pitching this idea about trying to do, I shouldn't say I pitched the idea. It was presented to me about doing something a little more unconventional rather than just teaching an art class. What can you do to kind of connect what you do professionally to what you're doing and connecting it to students? And so the opportunity about the masterclass came about. So long story short, it's our students and then students abroad. We got students from everywhere. We got students from Ghana and Chicago,
Wakanda.
that too. We got folks from all over, and they're all young men and women of color. I wanted to do that specifically because, and I'm open to talent wherever, but many of these folks they just don't have the resources. I mean, you think if it's challenging, for us here, imagine a young talent from Ghana. Yeah. They're super talented, but they can barely, the internet is a crapshoot to some degree.
It's a luxury. Yeah.
So, long story short, we formed the class. I'm bringing in, and I brought in the director from Spider-Verse. He's a friend of mine. He spoke on one session. I got guys and girls from everything from Black Panther movie to Last OG.
Right.
I got people that are set designers, animators, video game developers. I mean, all this stuff just to show them how vast the opportunities are. And these are also students that aren't. This is not just to be clear about it, this is not a class where just because you're interested, you can be a part of it.
Yeah, there's no introductory course.
There's no
You have to be into it,
the
show
criteria
progress.
is very high. Yeah. So the criteria is pretty high, and it has to be that way. I think that's the thing. It's like, again, they're the folks that are getting these opportunities. They're going to the CalArts and to RISD, which is the Rhode Island School, which is huge in the industry, Pratt, SCAD on some level, and a lot of these kids can't afford that stuff. Mm-hmm. So my goal is to try to narrow the gap just a little bit and do this. And we're doing it through Benedict College, so we're excited about it. And we've already had one class, one session, and this young lady from that session, they just announced that she just got a job at DC Comics.
DC Comics, that's awesome.
Yep, she's working at DC Comics.
Well, you're doing amazing, great work, and more information is on the Benedict website.
Benedict or social media. I'm just gonna straight up.
So your Instagram handle is Sanford Greene, Green with an E on the end.
Green with an E on the end.
So parting thoughts. If there was a young, interested illustrator that comes from a country town just like you, he's in the local Walmart looking at, I don't know why I give it a southern twang today. So yeah.
All from what we sounded like down there.
But if someone that 9 or 10-year-old that's in one of these places interested in this, what would be the advice you'd give them as kind of parting thoughts?
Draw every day.
Yeah.
Create every day. That's it. Yeah.
Well, Sanford, I appreciate your friendship, appreciate your professionalism, and the fact that you choose to stay here and be here is very important to the city. And I thank you for doing this, because I know you could have been doing something else right now. So I appreciate it. And I want you guys to give a round of applause one more time for my guest, Sanford Greene.
Thank you.
Go on now. 1, 2, 1, 2. All right. I'm trying to streamline this, because I could have talked to him for another 30 minutes or so, but I'm trying to get y'all the hell out of here, because I'm a man of my word. Let me start doing the robot in here. Show your love for my homie, DJ Liv, 101 2. Remix, social distance party, social distance wedding or bar mitzvah, call my homie up. He'll be there. Turn this down for a second. I want to thank you to a few people that's out here, because these are really trying times, and we're all kind of trying to figure this thing out right now. So shout out to everybody that's here right now. I wanted to be really, really kind of strict on how we handling this. I wanted to make sure that everyone felt safe and felt good about coming out, because I know it's crazy, right? Because it's like, I want to do stuff, but I don't want to get the Rona. I get it. So I appreciate everybody like putting up with what we're doing, and to wear the mask out and about, and sometimes your last might be muffled. But we appreciate you guys coming out. Yeah, still some folks coming in. What's going on, man? Hey, how y'all doing? I want to shout out to some of our sponsors to help make this possible. So I want you guys to clap every time I say somebody's name. I want to shout out to Trust This Theater for letting us do this here tonight. I want to shout out to South Carolina Humanities for giving us a grant to do this, so shout them out. Shout out to Carolina Film Network for filming this and hooking us up, my homie, Drew Gazadar. Shout out to Papa Jazz for helping us have like a gift basket to give us like a gift certificate to both. Shout out to Papa Jazz. I'm working on the weekend, so if y'all want to buy some music, come on Sunday and bring me a sandwich. We're gonna get this next speaker. That's all right. Everybody say yeah. Yeah. All right. That was all right. Some of y'all ladies had a deep voice. That's pretty good. My next speaker. I gotta do this like coming to America. It's like Randy Watson. I'm kidding. She's a councilwoman. She's a women's leadership speaker. She's also now currently a candidate for mayor of Columbia, South Carolina. Get more information for Devine from mayor.com. Please show your love for Tameika Isaac Devine. Make some noise! She actually wanted to come out to Nuck If You Buck, but I told her it would be a good look. I'm kidding. Thank you for coming here. I really appreciate it. Is your mic working? Turn it on. Do a test.
Testing? Yes.
All right, y'all can hear all right. Thank you for coming here. I know this is like non-conventional, and this is this isn't professional at all. So this isn't 60 Minutes. This isn't this ain't Post and Courier. It's just I wanted to talk to really fascinating people, and you were very, very gracious enough to do this. I wanted to give you a note. So when COVID started, I've been wearing sweatpants for 10 months. And my mom was like, Derek, you can't be speaking to somebody that's running for mayor wearing sweatpants. So she made me promise her.
So you wore pants?
I wore jeans. I haven't worn jeans. It was like, I took it out and I blew the dust off of them. So I definitely was excited about that. I have a sweatpants theory I'm gonna bring up in a second. But I'm really interested, like when I was saying with Sanford, we know about the things that you're doing, we know that you're involved in council, we know that you're involved in the community, but I'm always interested in people's origins and some of their earlier stories that people might not know of that fascinates me. So I'm wondering, what were challenges from your childhood
that you think most mold you as an adult now? I guess this is
and actually, it's not hard to think about. Because I did an interview about this very recently. So I actually have a neurological disorder called myasthenia gravis. Most people have never heard of it before, except I tell people that if you were an Empire fan, that time when they thought Lucius was going to die, and then they figured out what he really had, it was myasthenia gravis. And I remember watching, I didn't even watch Empire. One night I was watching it, and they said, they told him they had myasthenia. I was like, oh my gosh, they're talking about myasthenia on
I'm going to die, man.
Yeah. But anyway, I was diagnosed in 10th grade. And so it's a neurological disorder that you have weakened nerve muscles, and you can't control them even if, you know something's happening, but you can't control it. And, some people it's very severe where it looks like they've had a stroke because different parts of their body may be drooping or anything. So mine is, I'm blessed that mine is pretty limited to my eye. And so, like, a lot of folks will see, like, if, I'm out and about or whatever, people will notice that one eye might be smaller than the other, and you could tell, like, when I'm really, really tired, it gets really small. But anyway, I was diagnosed when I was in 10th grade, but I had symptoms for about 2 years, and my mom and dad would take me to the doctor and different things, and nobody really knew what it was. And they said, it was one time where I went to an eye doctor, and he looked, I guess, how they look in your eye and back, and he saw whatever and sent me to a neurologist. And so I was finally diagnosed after like 2 years of symptoms. And so I've been lucky because I've had portions of remission in my life. And so once I was diagnosed in 10th grade, I was on steroids for a while and some medication. It worked fine, so I was in remission. Got to college, and when I got to college, of course, oldest child, gone away. I went to Hampton University. I always tell people I chose that because I wanted to go to HBCU. I also wanted to go to a school that was far enough that my parents couldn't like pop in on me anytime they wanted to. Right.
It took a while.
But was close enough, like if I really, really needed them, they could be there within a few hours. So when I got to college, my parents were really nervous about me going because we were all, still kind of new to this diagnosis. But I went to college, and I was fine my freshman year. And then my sophomore year, I started pledging my sorority. Shout out to any Deltas in the room. But I pledged my sorority, and while I was online, I had an episode, and I passed out. And so, my parents drove up. That was kind of like if I really, really needed them, they could be there within hours. They came up, but it freaked the heck out of my line sisters. And so anyway, I got back on medication and everything else, but it got to the point where it scared so many people that my parents stayed up there for like a week and everything, made sure I was okay. But my line sisters were like always really worried that I would get sick. So I was never able to step. I wasn't, there were a lot of things that I could not do. And so for me, that became kind of, I think, the motivating factor that nobody can tell me that I can't do something.
Absolutely.
And so my adult life has always been that way that, I know that, certain things will happen that may limit the way you do things, but it won't stop you from ultimately going towards something you want to do. And so that's always been in my mind that, I may not do something the same way as somebody else, but it doesn't mean I can't do it. And I'm not going to let any physical limitations or definitely no mental things stop me from going after my goals. So that would be, I think, the childhood challenge that got me. And so even now, my mom will tell me, she'll see me on the news and say, are you getting rest? Because it's exacerbated by fatigue. And so my mom would say, I just saw you on TV and your eye looks small, you need to get some rest. And, so I'm like, okay, Mama, I promise I'm going to get some rest this weekend. But that still, again, continues to push me. And so most people are like, oh, I don't see how you do all that you do. But that is really it. That kind of drives me because I'm very motivated to do the things that I set my mind to.
What was the earliest memory of politics that you might have? And it doesn't have to necessarily be, at a political rally or something like that. It could be seeing someone, putting together a community drive or something like that. What was the first thing that sparked in your brain where you're like, I might want to get involved in community service?
So I will tell you, it's different for me. So community service has always been part of my life. I mean, my parents, my grandparents were always involved in the community. My mom is a Delta, so growing up I went to sorority events. My dad was always just doing things in the community. So community service and public service weren't always intertwined to me. And so I always was drawn to the community service and getting involved. And I never saw politics as public service, really, to be honest. Growing up and even the early years in college, I didn't know elected officials. Honestly, didn't really pay attention to politics. I mean, I think my first memory of politics, other than I really liked Jimmy Carter, and I kind of cried when he lost his re-election. Other than that, my first real, politics thing was, Bill Clinton, and I was in college, and so we were working on his campaign and, doing all that stuff. But I still never made that connection. So I think my earliest really getting involved in politics or public service was in law school. And so you learn a lot in law school about how laws are written, how things are driven to make a difference in the community. And that's where I first started seeing that politics was public service as, an elected position to help make the changes in the community.
What type of law? What was your inspiration? What was your focus?
So I've always been involved in women's issues, women's leadership and things. But while I was in law school, I was on the pro bono board, and I volunteered with Sister Care. And we went to the prisons because there are a lot of women who are in prison for either hitting back or ultimately killing their abusers. And so Nancy Barton, the executive director of Sister Care, started a program where we as law students would go in and meet with the women who were in prison for killing their abusers and help them with research on their appeals and understanding if they were up for parole or something, how to help them with their cases. Because they really couldn't afford lawyers to do a whole lot, so this was taking some. So that was kind of that first thing, is seeing that the way the law is written, although it is wrong to kill somebody, the law does not take into account the circumstances that some people have, and so that we needed to be there to help these women who finally fought back, but then ultimately they became more of a victim of a system that victimized them up to that point as well.
It's interesting because I think everything is kind of just interconnected, whether it's like art, music, politics, policy. And I remember I was watching something where they were talking about Regina King's film, One Night in Miami, and it was nominated for a Golden Globe. And it was like, this is the first African-American woman nominated for Best Director. And it dawned on me, I'm like, it's 2021 and it's still first for African-American women. And I think it's interesting because it's like, we hear a lot of these firsts all the time, and sometimes when I hear the first, I'm like, wow, we haven't done that yet, and there's possible history in the making. Where would you be the first African-American woman as mayor of Columbia, South Carolina, if you win the election?
Actually, the first woman.
Oh, wow, okay.
We've never, and not just we've never had a female mayor of the city of Columbia, we've never had a female run for mayor of the city of Columbia.
Really? So you first on top of first.
Yes.
Shout out to that. So you'll also be the first Delta though, right? So we got 3 firsts. We're the first Delta too. Look at that. She's like, I got so many firsts I'm gonna do. But I wonder, like, as far as like being a fan of like the NFL, there's something called the Rooney Rule, where at the end of a season, when there's like fired coaches, teams have to hire a new coach. And there was something established years ago called the Rooney Rule that basically told teams, hey, you have to interview at least one African-American candidate. And it hasn't done too well in the NFL, but they were saying that like places like corporate America have adopted that mentality because the theory is what ends up happening is that you have people hiring people to look and think like them. And there's like those blind spots. So if something goes wrong, the people that they hire will look at it the same way they have. But there were some studies that was showing that like, hey, when you hire, African American women or just women in workplaces, they work more efficiently because there's somebody that's going to see something differently than the old man that's running things, And that's interesting to me when we see that there's, we have Kamala in the White House now, or the Vice President. We have Stacey Abrams. We have Keisha Bottoms. Do you feel like the timing is simultaneously right for a woman / black woman to be mayor, but do you also feel like it's still, why did it take so long? Does that fall on you at all when you're thinking about what you're doing politically?
Sometimes, and mainly when I get questions like this and I kind of think about it, on an everyday basis it doesn't because I'm very laser focused on my goal. And, and what I tell people all the time is, if I do say so myself, I'm hands down the best candidate, black, white, female, male. I mean,
Right.
I have the most experience for this position. I've literally done the job. I've served as mayor pro tem for 3 years, and done the job while raising a family, running a business, and everything else. So I keep focused on the qualifications because I never want people to have, kind of an exception to about, well, yeah. It's about, it's about women, or it's about black women. This is the year, she only got elected because, she was a black woman and this is like, quote, the year of the black woman. I don't want anybody to be able to rationalize my campaign or my eventual win to something other than the fact that I was the most qualified for the position.
Yeah.
But saying that, I do think that it leads to, I think, something bigger in our country in that, particularly black women, we have worked really hard in all levels of everything for many, many years with very little recognition, very little thanks, and very little compensation.
Yeah.
And so I think that we're at a point in our country that not just black women, but a lot of people are saying it's enough is enough. Mm-hmm. We have to put credit where credit is due. And when you look at our society and who's, helping, build our communities, it's black women.
Yeah, y'all been saving us for a long time.
Yeah. So I think for that point, then I believe it's time because it's kind of like far overdue that black women particularly are getting able to step into our glory.
Yeah.
So even like the song I'm Every Woman, and I'll have to tell you guys, so Preach was like, what song do you come in out on? And I'm like, I actually was like,
Hit 'em up by Tupac, I'm sorry.
No, I actually was like, dog, I wish I had my own like theme song, like, whatever. And I'm like, I don't have a theme song, so that is my power song. I'm Every Woman has always been my power song. But the night that you text me for that, ironically enough, Shaka Khan was on Entertainment Tonight.
Wow.
And she was talking about her level of music, and they asked her about I'm Every Woman, and she told the story, and I had never heard this before. She said that when the song first came out and people talked about it, she felt it was like, oh gosh, it's like, look at me, I'm Every Woman, it's all about me. And then she said, but it's not. She said the song is about we as a community. It's about all women and bringing everyone up. And so, again, for this time, this election, and even my first election, I mean, when you talk about history, I'm already a history maker. I was the first African-American female elected to city council, and the first African-American to be elected at large, which when I ran the first time, most people said, it's the city of Columbia, we're not majority black, so a black person's not gonna win at large. And I was like, okay, really? Watch me. Let me call my deltas. But even then, it's more than me. It's about our community and about, again, all women kind of stepping into our places of power and owning our power in the way that we want to continue to bring the entire community up. And that's why I think it makes it bigger about our time, because it's not just about Kamala or Stacy or Keisha or Tameika, but it's about women who are, half of this country. We build our communities up every single day, so it's time for us to be able to be in positions that actually affect the changes in the communities that we want in a bigger way.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing because it's like, there's this quote where someone was saying that when it comes to civil issues or civil rights, they said that one group of people want the future to be now, and other people are thinking that the future is moving too fast. And I think that it usually happens when there's still first that ends up happening. And I have a question about sweatpants. And I'm serious about the sweatpants thing. It's really interesting. And I would love to hear your thoughts on this. But I spoke to a few other friends, a few other African-American people with political aspirations. We just had these conversations where, during the summer when the George Floyd murders happened and we had the Million Man March here in Columbia, and the idea was, hey, wear your Sundays best, And I get with that, I have old country black grandmama that, when I first got my locks, she said, baby, what you putting the plaits in your head for, So I come from that, right? But there was something that was really interesting to me about the dialogue that surrounded it. I remember when they interviewed one of the gentlemen, I think he got national press in the New York Times, why you encourage people to wear suits, and he said something to the extent of, I want, people to know that, hey, we're not like those people that's rioting, we're dressing nice, so that shows that we're a different level of this and this and that. And I got really frustrated. And I looked at my sweatpants as a form of revolt, because I was just like, if you think about like when Steve Jobs is out and about, well, back in the day, he's dead now, but like when Steve Jobs was, he would wear like a turtleneck all the time and mom jeans, and nobody denounced what he was saying, right? Zuckerberg wears, he wears a gray t-shirt or whatever. But it seems like it's that idea of, African Americans have to fight twice as hard to get half the credit, that type of thing. And there were so many things that were kind of tied up with that with me, where I'm basically like, if I'm wearing sweatpants and a hoodie, it's Corona. I haven't had a haircut since March 2020. It's a mess under here, right? But I feel like if I'm doing an interview, if I'm talking to someone, it shouldn't denounce what I'm saying. And I feel like the respectability politics that happens with it, where I feel like a lot of times we have the pressure of having to appear to be stronger, appear to feel like we can't express our pain or our frustrations publicly. We have to appear to look nicer because somebody might weaponize it against us. That if something happens to a loved one that's tragic, and we have a moment of frustration on the news, somehow, some way we're gonna be painted with that brush. So even if we're talking about being the best candidate because you're most qualified, do you still feel that pressure where when we were growing up, if we're watching like Wheel of Fortune, and there was somebody black on Wheel of Fortune, they're like, oh, please don't mess this up. Don't mess this up for us. You know what I mean? I don't know if that happens to other people, but do you feel that level of pressure or responsibility that regardless of what you're doing and you're representing the entire city, do you feel a pressure of, I have to make sure that I do this for us as well?
Oh, absolutely. And always, not just in this campaign, but my whole time in public service. And it's funny because I have very good, we all have, our kitchen cabinet or, our ride or die folks who are always going to be honest and tell us the truth. And I have a very amazing friend, beautiful friend, our current coroner, our first female coroner here in Richland County, Nada Rutherford. And I love Nada. Yeah. But Nada will be one of those that she will say, hey, I saw you in the news and you sounded great, but next time I need you to put on some makeup. And she will, and we were talking about this, and she said the reality is you are in the public eye.
Yeah.
And yes, what you say is articulate and it's amazing and everything, but she said there will be some people who will not hear what you say because they're gonna say, that's who we want to be our
Yeah.
mayor. That she doesn't look professional or mayoral or whatever because of this. And so, although that sounds superficial, it is a reality.
It's a reality that we deal with, absolutely.
And so it's not just about makeup or hair or dress, but it's also just about can you have a misstep? Can you have a bad day? Can you make a mistake? And I tell people this all the time. I mean, I've been front page above the fold on the paper several times for issues that sometimes are straight up mistakes. I mean, I'm a lawyer. I made a mistake years ago in a case. Most lawyers, if you make a mistake in a case, if it costs money, your insurance has to pay for it, it's done and whatever. This, because I'm on city council and someone wanted to make a big deal, it was front page on the paper, she made this mistake in this legal case. And so for me, I felt not just that it was about me, but it reflected on my law partner, it reflected on Black women lawyers, and so you get to that point as well that you feel like you just can't make a mistake. And that pressure is real. And I do think that's why there are so many folks who don't want to serve because they worry about not just them personally, but you bring your entire family, your village, everybody else into
I guess that leans into my question where, I commend anybody that leans into this, right? Because they say scientifically, I don't know if scientific is the word, but they say that like the number one fear of people is like public speaking. Number two is death. So the average person would rather be the person in the box than the one giving the eulogy, right? And public service kind of feels the same way, where it's like, look, I'm gonna put myself out there, I'm gonna invite criticism, I'm gonna invite these eyes, this attention, so anybody that volunteers for that, I commend them. And so my question is, how long have you been on council?
18 years.
2 questions. Number one, how was that when that first proposal came to like, you know what, honey? I think I'm gonna run for council. You know what I mean? Was there any pushback family-wise? Was that something that they felt that like, hey, are we gonna be all exposed to this? And I would have another question where in those 18 years, has there been anything that you might have felt strong about that over the years that you could see yourself, if you reflect on your years on council, that you might have softened to something, or you'd be like, you know what, I've completely changed my thoughts on these things because we evolve as people?
Yeah, so the first question is, so when I first ran for office, I was single, no kids, so the family conversation was with my parents and my brother. And they were all gung-ho because number one, they know that I'm very strong-minded, and by the time I've probably come to 10, I've already like kind of made up my mind. I'm just kind of, acting like I'm sharing and asking their permission. But no, there was not, because again, none of us were really used to politics either. So there wasn't an automatic thought of, oh wow, this might be an issue. I think the biggest thing, and more so for my dad, and I am a daddy's girl, for my dad was when I ran, I challenged an incumbent, and I got a lot of pushback. You're young, you're too young, you're African American, you're female, Black person hasn't run at large, and so there was so much kind of negativity, and he felt like my feelings would be hurt, and so that was the only kind of reluctancy, is my dad wanted to protect his baby, and he didn't like that. But we all were like, we're in this together, you want to do it, so we're all in it, we're going. So I didn't have that, whole lot of pushback or anything. It did, and my father has actually he passed away 10 years ago. But a couple times where there were issues in the paper or whatever, his thing, he would just kind of get mad. That his baby girl was being treated unfairly or whatever. And so that was really the only thing we had there. The second part about kind of if I've softened or anything, I think
maybe not softened is the word, but like if there's something that a little personal story, right? Like I come from hip hop culture, and I remember hip hop is very unforgiving in certain regards, where there's a lot of things with hip hop where it's highly sexualized. There's a lot of stuff where sometimes it's is really negative to the LGBTQ community, you know what I mean? And this stuff we just grew up on, right? And I would say later on, like, damn, you know, see, the Lord Sucker was right, you know? I'm 12 years old listening to Doggy Style, and it's some of the most filthiest stuff, and I'm dancing to it, you know? And I feel like those changes in my mind of growing up on certain hip-hop music, and as violent and as sexualized as it was, and I sing to them songs to this day, high five myself. But someone like C.D. Loris Tucker coming from that culture of like, look, I marched with MLK. I didn't do that to sing, for y'all to sing this, you know? And so it's just something that gets older, where like even me as older, I listen to those older records, I'm like, ooh, you know, like, I don't know, if I had children, I don't want them hearing this, you know, listen to some Prince, you know, which he might have been naked on the cover, but still, right? But it's those things, those perspectives that when I look back at it, it's not necessarily that I've softened to them, but I evolved on certain things where I'm like, you know what, I can admit that these things of the culture that I love still has some growing up to do. You know what I mean? So I just wonder, like, are there some issues or things that have come up over time when you look back and like, you know what, I wouldn't have applied the same approach now as I would have, you know, 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, probably several. I mean, I don't think my approach is different. Mm-hmm. What I do think is that with experience comes wisdom. Mm-hmm. And for me, like I remember when I was first elected, like I said, I was young, first African-American female, and it was meant to be lighthearted, but I remember the state paper had this thing, this like thing called As the City Turns. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but it was like this little comical thing that they did.
What racist thing they say? They say some sexist
well,
racist
it was
thing.
like, I was like Jaquana or something. I mean, they had some really, they called me this really, like, it was kind of like Shanae. I mean, it was like, you know, it was a really ethnic name that was, you know, it just seemed like it wasn't complimentary. I mean, that was the perception. That was, yeah. And so, but they would talk and then they would do things. And I remember there was this one issue where, you know, I am Tameika. I'm, you know, no matter where I am, if I'm, you know, in the community, I'm at City Hall, I'm at the White House, I'm going to be me. And I don't change who I am. And I do sometimes wear my heart on my sleeve. And in the reverse, if you have said something the wrong way, you're going to know that you said it the wrong way. And so there was this thing that they were doing, and it was like Taquana, you know, rolled her eyes and her neck, and da 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 da. And it was like, it was supposed to be funny. And I remember thinking of, okay, I'm the first Black female, I'm up here, I'm being portrayed as the angry Black woman. And so for me, I think I changed my approach even when I disagreed, because I knew that eyes were on me and it was a stereotypical, like, was she gonna have that stereotypical reaction?
So even when you have a right to be angry, you still have to adjust your anger because it'll be weaponized against you.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I did that for a long time, and I think that there were some things that I may have wanted to speak more harshly about, that I did not, because of that initial reaction to me speaking out against something passionately. Now, over the years, again, with experience comes wisdom, and I am who I am. And so you will see most people who watch city council meetings when, you know, if it's something that I'm passionate about, affordable housing, economic mobility, you know, investing in the Black community, not because it's the Black community, but because it has been traditionally and systematically underserved, and we have to make those investments, I do speak up very strongly. But there was a time period I didn't, and I think that was because of that. And so, to your question, I think the way you handle things, you evolve in that manner, and you recognize you can get the same result, maybe in a different way, but if the way that you're getting the result is not true to you, you're not going to get the result.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm always interested in, like, the thought process of, you know, when people are successful, those moments where you're at that crossroads. So my two questions before we part. Was there a moment where you were just like, you know what? I'm a lawyer. I ain't gotta do this no more. Forget this city council thing. I'm out. Was there a moment where you were just like about to leave? And if that moment occurred?
I don't know if there was a moment. I will say maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, it just seemed like there was a lot happening, relentless. I mean, when it's you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm dealing with so much. And so there just seemed to be a lot of things coming at me at one time. And I remember thinking, wow, am I still effective? Is it worth it? Because now, not really for me, but because I have children now that are older. And so, my teenager she's on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And so when people, talk about her parents, she sees it. Yeah. I have now a 10-year-old who is in really good school, but she watches the news. She watches the news probably more than her parents. She loves the news. And so there was a point where I did consider whether or not I wanted to remain in public service because my kids were getting older and I wanted to make sure to a certain extent they were shielded from any negativity that they might experience. But there wasn't one thing. It was just kind of, have I done all I can do, and is it worth it when you balance the benefit and cost benefit analysis of the effect on your kids versus the impact you're having on the community. But the thing that I think that definitely changed is I remember the election 2 years ago. And I was not on the ballot, but on election day, I'm always out. I'm trying to put out fires of, voter suppression or confusion. I take snacks to the poll workers, so I'm just out. And I remember making a comment. I was taking my oldest to school, and I said something like, "Oh gosh, it's election day. It's so good to have an election day, and I'm not on the ballot." And she said, "Mommy, you're not on the ballot?" She said, "So you're not running again?" And I said, "No, baby, it's not my seat up." Yeah. And I said, "Why?" I said, "Would you be disappointed if Mommy didn't run again?" And she said, "Well, yeah," because she said, "I really like the way you help people."
I'm gonna cry.
And I was about to cry too, and I was like, "Really?" And I said, because I said, sometimes Mommy feels bad that I'm not home as much. And she said, "But we understand why you're not home, because you're out helping our community." And she said, "I like that." I don't make you cry.
Let's cry together.
Yeah. So that is, for me, that was it. So I was like, no matter, I can take it. I mean, I can take people criticizing me, saying whatever, because I also realize when people actually usually come at me, they actually don't even they're not talking about my service. Yeah. Because my service speaks for itself, and I am helping the community. And it's the other things that people may have an issue with. And so I realized, for me, I can take it if I'm still affecting the community. And when I get those calls from, just this week, 82-year-old woman in a wheelchair that had a high water bill. Mm-hmm. And I was able to help her get that resolved. I have a grandmother, daughter, and a granddaughter all living in the house where there was a water main break and it was flooding their backyard. And she called me and I was able to get that fixed. When those things happen and I'm able to do it, it makes it all worth it. Absolutely. So for that, people ask, after this length of service, why do you still want to run? Why do you want to be mayor? And what I tell people all the time is because, like I said, I've done the work, I've been working, I'll continue to work with or without an elected position. But the reality is, with the position and opportunity to be mayor, I can devote so much more time to the results I want to get. And with that comes the ability to bring other resources to the table. And so when I think about the impact that I can have, and I pray all the time about, Lord, please use me and direct me where I need to be. Mm-hmm. And, and it was so, I mean, it was just confirmation. I have a devotional, and on the day I announced that I was running for mayor, the devotion that day, the title was Elevated Destiny.
Wow.
And in it, and I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember the exact words, but it said something about, you've asked the Lord to give you an ability to make a greater impact. He's prepared you for this. You're ready. It will cause you to come out of your comfort zone. But if you ask for something and he's ready to give it to you, so go with it. Basically, that's paraphrasing. And so that is why I feel like I've been able to do great work, but I can do so much more as mayor. And so that is why I've chosen to run. And I really feel like, you know, back to the very first question you asked, the timing. You know, God gives you for what you ask for, maybe not in the time you want, but in the time that is part of his plan. And I just really feel like it's his plan right now to give me an opportunity to serve this city that has given so much to me in a bigger, bolder way. So I'm ready.
Well, look, anybody that is looking for, you know, to put themselves out there, open to criticism, open to frustrations, open to, you know, not being home with their family, that is definitely a public service. And we're happy to have you in the city fighting for us. And I thank you guys for coming out. Show your love one more time. To maybe the future mayor of Columbia, South Carolina, Tameika, Devine. You got this. Look at it, man. It's still 9:57. I told y'all I'll get y'all out here quick. When the shit started, it was an hour and a half. Thank y'all so much. Hopefully we'll do these again soon. We might do it probably a few months from now. We want to kind of recalibrate, and thank you so much for coming out, even in these times of Rona, to come out and hear these amazing minds, amazing people do great things still in the community. Shout out to anybody that's running for any office, whether it's city council or mayor, during the time of Rona where, you know, your lifeblood is to meet people and talk to people, interact with people. So to find those new creative ways to reach out to the community, I salute anybody and everybody that's trying to make the community better. Thank y'all so much. Go by the name of Preach Jacobs. Buy a shirt, buy a book, follow us on social media, and thank you to Trust Us once again. Make some noise. Thank y'all.
I never told you for anybody else.